if you were here with me right now. Well, I'm pretty sure that you'd say, oh, careful, babe, you're biting off more than you can chew.
Hey everybody, Joe Popp from Popp Rock Shop, and today on Poppcast number 4, we have the one and only Roy Peak, who is probably the hardest working guy in show business, and we're going to get into all that today. Roy just released a new album, Exile in Americana, which he had a show for on Saturday night at Mudville Listening Room, and I was in attendance, and it was brilliant. So we're going to talk to Roy. Roy, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
Where were you born, and what year was that?
Talking 1964. Hey, Aggie.
That's okay. She's the shop dog.
Oh, yeah, she's good. Born in 1964 in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Oh, wow. That's
Actually,
interesting.
Yeah. My dad was stationed down there at a Marine base when I was born, but then they moved back to Louisville, Kentucky. I was there for 18 years before coming to Florida.
Oh, okay. I always thought you were a Jacksonville
No.
born and raised guy. That's
No.
interesting.
I'd only been in Jacksonville a few years when we met.
And what year was that? Do you remember? Probably.
We met in, I want to say 89 or 90 maybe. I'm not sure.
I left here in 90, so.
It was during the, we had the Creative Music.
Oh, Creative Music
The
Coalition.
Creative Music
So that would have been
Coalition.
89
What was that?
or, yeah, probably 90. Yeah, because it
Okay.
was the same year that I left.
Okay.
So, which was a neat thing. We'll get into that.
Okay.
And so, born in 64, and you came to Jacksonville when you were about 18,
Yeah,
you said? Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your first guitar? Did you start playing in Louisville? Or
Yeah,
or in-
my mom got me a guitar. I think it was a Checkmate
Okay.
acoustic, with the strings this high off the fretboard. Wish I still had it, but, that was my first guitar. I took 2 guitar lessons from a country guy named Sonny Forrest. So how can you forget a name like Sonny Forrest?
It's a great
Great name. Took 2 lessons from him, and everybody was playing guitar. And he kept saying, "We need a bass player. We need a bass player in this." So my mom bought me my first bass, a K. It was a K bass, one of those. What style was it? It looked like one of the Gibsons with the double horns.
Oh, okay. Oh, like an SG
like-
style?
Yeah, like an SG style. It's bright red, candy apple red. It was a short scale, but I loved it. We got it real cheap. So I switched to bass after 2 lessons.
Wow.
And I was the bass player in the neighborhood, basically, because nobody else wanted to play bass.
And what town was that?
This was in Louisville, Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Yeah.
And what age were you then?
12 or 13.
So like 7th grade, you're doing
Yeah,
all these things, and
Yeah.
And did you play in any bands up there, like just kind of kid bands?
Mostly just friends in the neighborhood for the most part. In 8th grade, a friend of mine got me into punk rock. And we were going to start a punk rock band. And he was the bass player. I became the drummer.
Okay.
Could not play drums to save my life. We did one gig at a party, and I think we got through 4 or 5 songs before they told us to stop playing. And that was the end of that band.
And they were like hardcore punk songs, short.
Yeah, this was very, very Ramones and Sex Pistols kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody else in the neighborhood, they listened to Journey, Styx.
Right.
Leonard
Because you're
Skinner.
talking 78, 79.
Yeah, so they didn't, we started, I think I was 14 when I was playing drums in that band, so which didn't last long. And then I didn't do much of anything until I came to Jacksonville.
And that was when you were 18?
Yeah.
And were you going to college or finished
No,
high
I was
school?
actually working down here at the Independent Life building
Oh, wow.
in
okay.
insurance. My dad got me a job there.
Right. No, that's pretty sweet.
And I did that for, 5 or 6 years, I guess.
And what was your first serious band here in Jacksonville, like one that did some gigs or something like that?
I was in I was in a country band that did a lot of Jimmy Buffett. And we played at a bar in Avondale that became Partners later on. We played a couple of shows there. So this was my first introduction to Florida music, playing Jimmy Buffett. And I'd never heard of Jimmy Buffett before.
Really?
This was new to me. I'm like, what are these songs? I'd never heard this stuff. But my first real band, I think that I would consider was playing with Craig Spurko in a band called The Underground.
Okay, yeah.
And it was a funny story. I put a flyer out looking for bands. Hey, I'm a bass player. I'm looking for bands. And I listed like New York Dolls, Velvet Underground, Ramones. I want to play this kind of stuff. Craig calls me up and he said, "Oh yeah, we got to get together. We got to do this." And he says, "I'm going out of town for a couple of months. Get a hold of me in January." I'm like, "Okay." Call him up in January, no answer. Call him up in January, no answer. I go into American Music over on Lenox.
Okay, where I used to
and there's
work.
a flyer up there with somebody looking for a bass player. Velvet Underground, New York Dolls, Ramones, and it was Craig.
What, he changed
With
his
a
phone
different,
number?
I guess different numbers. I called him up and we hooked up after that point. And the Underground played. I don't know. We played the 7:30 Club. We played a few other little clubs around town. We played a lot of bars that probably were not the best place for us to play.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was the sound like? Was it like the Ramones and New York Dolls and Velvet Underground?
Kind of, sort of. I guess at the time, Craig actually had a, we all liked those bands, but he actually sounded a little bit more like Elvis Costello, I think, in his songwriting, because he had very smart, intelligent songs, but he wanted to do them in a rock format.
Right.
Revved up rock format. And so I couldn't tell you exactly what we sounded like. I would say a cross between the Ramones and the Velvet Underground would probably simplify it.
Okay.
We got a guitar player later on who had more of a rockabilly style, and he kind of added that flavor.
Right.
But you know how bands are, they implode after a while. And when that band folded, Craig started a band called Soul Guardians with Lauren Fincham.
Oh, okay.
And I was the bass player for that.
Cool.
And we went to Nashville, recorded a CD, did a lot of gigs around here for many years.
Yeah.
And that's about the time I met you, I think.
Yeah, well, those people were very integral to the Jacksonville scene. Craig
Yes.
and Lauren's still here. She's playing with you currently and played on this recent album, correct?
Yes, yes.
Do you think there's a Jacksonville sound per se? Because your music, I hear a lot of influences. I hear everything from like Lou Reed to the Replacements to Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty. Like, I mean, it's
Right.
very, you have a very wide.
Well, I listen to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I have a wide range of music that I like and listen to, and it's just whatever comes out from listening to all that,
Do you think you were pushing back against the Southern rock thing back in these days? Like with the Blighted Area and Einstein A Go-Go? You played at all those places, obviously.
I didn't play
right?
Blighted Area. I did play Einstein twice, I think.
All right.
Played 7:30 Club.
Which was a pretty punk place. 7:30
Yeah,
Club.
yeah.
That was Tommy Berlin's.
Tommy Berlin's, yeah.
Well, Stiletto's practice room that they turned into
Yes.
a venue, which we talked about in our
Yeah, I saw a
second
lot of. I
podcast.
lived just down the street from there, so
Oh,
I saw
okay.
a lot of shows there.
All right.
Yeah, but I didn't know Tommy at the time. I'd seen him around,
Right.
but we didn't really know each other back then.
Mm-hmm.
So
And so back then, you're playing with Craig,
Mm-hmm.
and then what was the next progression out of that to your next band? Did he leave sometime shortly thereafter?
no, he was in town for quite a while. He had a band called 86 Love. They used to do a lot of shows in what was that, San Marcos Square. He did a lot of other things. Yeah.
Did he play at the theater there at San Marco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did some shows with him there, and I think after that he probably did some shows there.
So you were also in 86 Love with Craig too.
I was sometimes in 86 Love. Sometimes he had other bass players too. It was basically Craig's band, and sometimes he'd call me up and say, "Oh, so and so can't make it tonight. Can you sub?" I'm like, "I don't know the songs," and he goes, "That's okay."
I think we should do one of those rock and roll family trees of Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you'd be right in the middle. Like everybody would be 2 degrees of Roy separation.
There was
the
a
most.
time when I was playing with bands out at the beach. This would have been the 2008, 2009. I was in 9 bands at one time.
Oh my God.
That were actually playing out and doing gigs. After about 2 months, I said, "That's too much." So I knocked it down to 7.
How do you keep that in your head? I mean, you don't use sheet music. You're playing on stage, right? I mean, you just get the songs under your belt.
You just do what you can.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that I was doing then was a lot of Americana stuff. So it's a lot of 1-4-5.
Right, yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff. It's easy stuff. You just kind of listen and you follow along and you make it work.
And at this time, you're a pretty developed musician. You know, you've been playing for so long, so you can just kind of follow along, I'm guessing.
Hopefully.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Hopefully.
And did you tour with any of these bands back in the day? You said you recorded in Nashville with Craig Spurko. And...
Yeah, we recorded in Nashville. We recorded in New York, Gainesville, Fort Lauderdale.
Was there a label you were associated with?
No. Craig had his 12th House Records that he was associated with. I didn't really do much touring because I was just playing in Jacksonville so much.
Right.
Craig and I, with Soul Guardians, we did a tour. We went up to New York, played a couple of gigs, came back. And with one of the other bands I was in, I'm trying to think what band that was. We went up to North Carolina and South Carolina, played a couple of rinky-dink bars, came back. That was about all the touring I ever did. Mostly I was just in Jacksonville and the outskirts playing.
Right, playing wherever you could.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the Creative Music Coalition that Craig and I were in it. Were you one of the director people? I was like me and Fitzgerald and
I don't think I was ever
Arvid.
I was there helping out a lot, but I don't think I was ever
and that's
a
where
director.
we met each other, right? And I was playing in Ant Farm or something.
Ant Farm.
That's a terrible band. So I'm glad I moved away.
You did a replacement song. I remember that.
I just did that in the sound check. I did
Androgynous. I remember that, and
I've
never seen anyone else in Jacksonville do a replacement song at that point.
And I remember you coming up to me at the sound check and saying, "Hey, man, that's a replacement song."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, cool, you know that." You know, because we were like at Artemis Pyle was on the gig or something.
Yes.
Like it was, I don't know, that the Creative Music Coalition was kind of all over the map.
Yes.
It wasn't all alternative; it was everything. But as long as
there
it was
was
original,
Southern rock, country,
yeah.
classic rock, I guess you would call some of it, and there was a lot of underground rock.
I didn't see you for probably 5 years. And then I saw you in Orlando at a gig we did at the Copper Rocket with Radio Berlin.
Ah, okay.
So talk about that time of your career.
Radio Berlin. Radio Berlin came out of the band Tommy Berlin and His Big Head.
Right, which we talked about on the show.
Yeah. Dave Young was the original bass player, but he wanted to switch to guitar, so they needed a bass player. I was looking to get out of Soul Guardians at the time because I needed a change. I needed to go somewhere else with my life. So basically, I went up to Tommy at one of his gigs, said, "Hey, I'm your new bass player." And he was like, "Yeah, okay, we'll audition you next week. Yeah, sure, whatever, dude." But I did the audition, and I think he was still not sure if I was going to be in the band or not. He didn't think he wanted me. And the very first gig we did at the Bad Boy Club, they had that tile floor on the stage. And the very next to last song, I ended up smashing the neck off of my bass.
Purposefully?
No,
Okay.
It was not purposely. It was just getting out of control with the songs. It's punk rock. It's crazy. And the neck just broke. And then I'm thinking, oh, shit, we still got one more song to do. What am I going to do? Tommy starts the song because he's got his back to me. He doesn't realize what's going on. Dave's singing. So I just start pounding on the bass as hard as I can to get noise out of it. And finish the song. And Dave said, "I heard all that noise and I was too scared to turn around and see what was going on."
And you're there with your neck snapped off.
The neck
right?
is like tilted up, the headstock's tilted up like this, and the strings are off like this on the neck.
So it broke right like at the nut? Like where the headstock
pretty much,
wow.
Yeah, but I think after that, then Tommy was like, "Yeah, you could be in the band."
That's totally Tommy's style.
Yeah.
So what a character he is.
Yeah.
And, it's really fun to be reacquainted with all you guys. When did you get into your recording studio? I mean, did you just find that out of necessity to record yourself, or was it to make a business? What was the impetus from Radical Recording?
A little bit of both. I was doing recording. I was doing engineering at Craig Spurko's studio. He had a home studio at the time, and he recorded a lot of people. He did Dave Roberts stuff, the Crawfish of Love.
Oh, I remember them. Yeah,
He did
very
that.
experimental kind of
Yeah.
Trout Mask replica kind of.
Yes.
Stuff like that,
yeah,
right?
very
Yeah.
crazy stuff. I helped him with some of that. He did the first couple albums for Lauren Fincham. He did Steve Shanholzer did something there with somebody. There was a lot of people recorded there. Probably 20 or 30 people did recordings there in a very short span of years. And I was helping him out doing engineering. And then at some point, Craig decided he needed to step back. It was just getting too much for him. He wanted to take a break. And one of the guys that I had worked with, Troy Lucarilla, Troy wanted to do a third album, but Craig was taking a break. So Troy was like, hey, if I give you an advance on the next recording, could you set up a little studio and we could record it? It's like, sure. So that's how it happened.
And that's where you live now, and that was the garage? Or
No,
was
this was
precursor to
this
that?
was about 3 studios ago.
Okay, so
you've
moved radical
Yeah.
as you've grown.
Yeah, it started out in a bedroom. Actually, it was the garage bedroom at a house in Arlington, and a little studio about half this size.
Okay,
Very
this
tiny.
is 300 square feet, so
Yeah,
probably
it-
150 square feet. or
Probably,
less,
yeah. It was 10 by 11, maybe. 10 by 12, something like that. It was very small. You should see us trying to put drums in there and record.
So you did record drums.
Oh,
in
yeah,
there.
we did it. We recorded drums. We recorded one of Matt Morris's bands. Of course, they have the drums, and he brings the big SVT amp, and we have to record that in the room.
eight 10-inch speakers.
Exactly, and Matt's amp, the half stack.
Right.
So,
in
yeah,
this tiny bedroom.
in this tiny bedroom. But we did it. We got it done. That's where it started. And from after that got going, I was like, I want to keep doing this. I like doing this. I'm learning a lot. And I really wasn't thinking about doing my own stuff yet. That came about a few years later.
Okay.
And it kind of was a slow process. It was like I wrote a song. It's like, oh, let's record this song. And I recorded it and figured out how to do everything on it. Got a friend of mine to play drums on it. And this took about 7 or 8 years of doing this little by little and then getting enough songs for the first album.
Which was what year?
Came out 2014.
Wow. So all these years you were building up to this. You're really more of a side man than a
Yeah,
songwriter.
yeah.
Up until this album came out.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And what was your gear like in that first little studio? Were you using like a Porta studio or a 4-track or an 8-track?
No, I had, I was using a computer running Cakewalk Sonar. And I was
Back
using...
then in the little studio?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They had Sonar 2.0,
Okay.
And I was running that on a Dell computer with Windows, which is what I still use. I was using, Behringer had a DDX3216 digital board. So you could record 16 channels at once and you could play back 32.
Right.
And it's a cheap little board, but it did great. It worked. What I liked about it was the outputs were ADAT outputs. It wasn't USB. And so you'd have to get an ADAT card in the computer, but then you had your 32 channels. So, so I could record a whole band, 16 channels, in this little bedroom, you know, and put it all together. And I used that setup. Let me think. I had that going in 2003, I think. And I used that setup until about 2017.
Okay.
And then the Behringer board died, finally, after many repairs. And finally I said, okay, I've got to upgrade. And I upgraded to the other Behringer that they have now, the X32.
Yep.
And that's what I've been using since then, which was a bit of a learning curve because I wasn't... There's a lot of things I liked about the old board that didn't transfer to the new board. But once I figured all that out, I've been very happy with it.
And you use the mic pre's in the X32?
I have a couple of boards. I have an old 80s Toa console, 16 channel. I use that for some mic pre's, usually for the drums, and I have a Mackie board that I use for some of the mic pre's.
So you don't use the X32 pre's, or sometimes you do?
Sometimes, but I mean, usually I'm just going straight in and keeping the Behringer pre's very low.
Right.
You know?
It's amazing that the ADAT is long gone, but we're still using that light pipe protocol.
I'm still using that.
I have a API rack over there that has all my 500 modules in it.
Okay.
And I can light pipe that into my little Apollo and get 8 more channels. So I have 10 channels in with a little 2-channel interface. So
there you go.
And people still use it. It's still on everything pretty much.
And I will say I like the sound of the light pipe, the ADATs,
really
better than the USB. Every time I've had to record USB before sometimes with something wrong with the mixer or something, and it's just the ADATs sound better. They sound clearer.
Huh, interesting. And who have you recorded at Radical?
Oh gosh, Troy Lucarilla, who got me started, Lauren Fincham, me and Tommy recorded Exile.
I remember that, yeah.
Which has never come out yet.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get him to put that stuff out. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a sore point with us.
All right.
Robert Lester Folsom, who I met at the Riverside Arts Market, recorded his comeback album with his other band, and eventually ended up being the bass player in that band when the other bass player dropped out. And we've been working together for at least 12 years now.
Wow.
So, and we've done 3 or 4 albums, I think.
He's a very interesting guy and has made some headway on.
He's a very interesting guy with some very interesting friends.
Okay,
yeah.
So we're going to get him on the show. I talked to him at the
gig,
gig,
you should definitely get him on the show. He's got some stories. He might even be able to hook you up with some of his friends that have great stories.
Okay, we need that.
Yeah.
Back to the rock family tree. You've played with all these people and you break up, but you remain friends. Like,
try to.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't always work. Yeah, it doesn't. Like me and Tommy in Radio Berlin, when Radio Berlin blew up, which was it was kind of a big nightmare. I didn't talk to Tommy for years.
Really?
Didn't see Tommy, didn't know what Tommy was doing. One day I was like, I'm going to Google Tommy Berlin just to see what comes up. Googled his name, couldn't find nothing. Like, okay, he's disappeared. He's off the planet. Who knows? And then someone says, oh, I saw Tommy down playing guitar downtown for some skateboard kids in a park. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what? And eventually we hooked up again, and that's where the band Exile started.
Right. Yeah.
Which was me, Tommy, and my friend Sean Jones on drums.
Which I forgot about that band. We didn't talk about it in his interview.
I was gonna grill Tommy about that. he didn't talk about Exile or Elvis Kabong.
Right, and I remember Elvis Kabong, and I remember Exile, and you guys, did you release a demo or something? It seems like there was one song.
There's some.
We did Another Girl, Another Planet.
Yeah, there's some stuff on Reverb Nation, I think, that's up there, but we've never really released
like a formal album.
We've got enough. We have more than enough stuff to do a formal album. Mm-hmm. And I keep telling him, just throw it all together, call it a Tommy Berlin album, and put it out there. Mm-hmm. Tommy.
Yeah. Hello, Tom. You do all the mastering and everything yourself, or do you have it professionally mastered?
A lot of that, I master my stuff myself, mostly because I'm just very, very picky about it.
Right.
Some of the stuff that I've sent off for mastering comes back, and I'm like, I think it could be a little better, and I end up mastering it myself, and I liked it better.
Are you using like Ozone or any kind of?
I like Ozone. Mm-hmm. Ozone I like. There's
which is this is mastering software.
Yeah, mastering software. Yeah, Ozone I like. I use a couple different plugins depending on what I'm doing, and a lot of it is I can't master something. Real mastering engineers can just put something in, master it one time, it's done. I have to master it. I listen in the living room. I listen in the car. I'm like, no, it's not right. And I'll go back and make some adjustments until I get it right.
Yeah.
I have used other mastering engineers for some of my other customers because a lot of times I don't want to master something I recorded unless I have to.
You need another set of ears.
Another set of ears. Yeah. Although I will say that sometimes I'm still unhappy with the masters that I get back with that.
Yeah, and a lot of times they don't give you a lot of choices. Like here's one with a -1 dB vocal or something.
Right. And a lot of times, sometimes they get aggravated when you ask them to do some changes. Like, oh, this is compressed a little too much, or we're missing some low end here. And I get a real snarky email back from the guy, and I'm like, well, sorry.
Well, and they start listing all, well, I've worked for blah, 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 and these guys, and you should be happy that I'm working
I'm a
with
Grammy
you.
Award-winning mastering engineer. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, well, then why isn't it correct?
Yeah. So let's talk about your new album, Exile in Americana.
Yes.
And there's an interesting concept behind this album where it was a response to a Liz Phair album,
Yes.
Exile in Guyville, which was a response to Exile on Main Street by the Rolling Stones.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you're this tertiary response, in line. And
Right.
I just thought that was a really interesting take.
It came about by accident. I was recording the next album, and I had about 5 or 6 songs recorded. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, where are these songs going to fit? What songs do I need to finish up this album? And I was driving in the car, and a Liz Phair song comes on. And I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if anyone's ever done a response to her album. Because I would think that would be
Because
normal.
you knew her album was a
Was
response,
a response
to
to the
so-
Stones, And so I looked it up on the internet for days. I did searches, could not find anyone who had ever done a response to her album. And I'm thinking, well, damn, I've got to do this. I've got a new plan now for the album. So what ended up was going to be a 10-song album is now an 18-song album, plus one extra song, 19-song album.
Well, and I checked. The Stones album's 18 songs.
Hers
Her
is
song's
18.
18, and yours is 18.
Yeah, mine's 18 with a cover of her song Never Said at the very end.
Ah, okay.
To just kind of, I used to do that at open mic nights, that song.
All right.
Because no one else was doing it. It's an easy 4 chords. It's very easy to do, but it's very up there. So I was like, I need to cover this song and put this on the album too. And originally I was going to put it in with the other 18 somewhere because the Stones album, they have, I think, 2 cover songs on theirs. Liz doesn't have any cover songs on hers. It's all just original songs.
You were a big fan of hers, obviously, to do this
I wasn't a
project?
big fan at the beginning. When she first came out, I remember going over to people's houses and her posters up on the wall and people talking about her. And I was in Radio Berlin at the time, and it's like my life was Radio Berlin. I didn't listen to anybody else. It's just nobody else mattered. It was Radio Berlin. It was a few years later, I came across her album, I think in a cassette that I came across, and my van had a cassette player at the time, and I started listening to it. I'm like, well, damn, this is a really good album. These are great songs. How did I miss this?
Yeah. Well, and the production techniques on a song like Flower, where she's doing this really weird
Oh, yeah.
noise thing underneath.
The
and,
guitar going, bah, bah, bah,
Yeah,
bah, bah,
yeah.
bah.
And
Yeah.
a couple of the songs on there have this really weird production technique, and I'm sure you gravitated
I
towards
like
that.
the production that it was it was done in a very nice studio, but it was still kind of lo-fi, which I
Definitely.
really liked, and I gravitated toward that. And I like that the bass player and the drummer were the same person. He would play the drum part to the song first, then come back and overdub bass.
Interesting.
So
Do you do that?
I do that on a lot of my stuff. I try to play drums on my stuff. If I can't do it, I know plenty of drummers who could come in and do something that I can't do. If I can't get the feel, if it doesn't work for me, luckily I know a lot of musicians. So that helps.
Oh, you know everybody in Jacksonville pretty much. So let's talk about some of the production stuff. I thought a lot of the songs had varying production techniques, which I liked. Like the first song, what's it called? Bite Off More Than You Can Chew?
Biting off more than I can chew.
That song has a really compressed, almost like that New York double compression, or one compressed track mixed with a dry track, and really
okay.
has a kind of a squished drum feel on it. And then later in the album, it's more open. So
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
was that purposeful? Or you just said, this is rock and I'm going to push all the faders up?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just every song gets a different feel.
Right, yeah.
Every song has a different feel, so you want to approach every song differently.
Yeah.
You kind of start off basically, a lot of these songs, if I'm recording them by myself, I'm just laying down a rough track, and going in and adding everything later. A couple of them were done with me and the drummer putting down a basic track, and then going from there. The first song, I think a lot of that sound you're getting is actually because Tommy's playing guitar on that song. And when Tommy plays guitar, it's going to be loud, it's
Yep.
going to be big, it's going to be out there. And trying to get that balance of how to get Tommy in the mix where he should be, but not where he's overpowering everything. Where he's not overpowering the song. And that took a lot of mixing back and forth to get him because I would mix it and it would sound really good, but the guitar's too loud. Then I'd mix it again, it sounds really good, but the guitar's not loud enough. So it was a lot of back and forth, and like you say, a lot of limiting and compression and to straighten out everything.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of the digital stuff is you can go back and put a little tweak on it and bounce it right out, not even in real time.
Yeah.
You know, which saves us a lot of time as engineers. For sure.
It has helped out a lot.
What are your plans with the album? You going to tour? Or are you just going to keep playing around Jacksonville?
Playing around Jacksonville, yeah. Well, you know, I'm married. Hi, Debbie. Have, you know, a cat and a chicken to take care of. You know, I do.
What's the chicken about? Let's talk about. I mean, everyone has a cat, but who has a chicken, Roy?
Well, the chicken, which is on the cover of the album.
Right.
That's Abby. And one day my wife comes in and goes, "There's a chicken on the fence." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "There's a chicken on the fence." And I run out there and there's a chicken standing on the fence, just sitting there. And I'm like, looking around. I'm like, okay, how did this get here?
Well, you don't live on a farm or anything.
No.
Yeah. It's like you live in a suburb or...
Yeah, and it was starting to rain out. It was winter. It was cold out. So we brought the chicken in, and we're like thinking, well, what are we going to do with this chicken? So we ended up getting her a little cage and setting her up. Mm-hmm. And we tried to put her outside for a while, and she did not like being outside. You could tell when she was outside, she would get depressed. She would just kind of mope around. She would get angry sometimes and just, rah, 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 you know. Mm-hmm. We bring her in the house. Suddenly she's fine. She's walking around like, oh, yeah, this is it. This is the life. This is good.
So you just found this chicken? They don't microchip chickens, I guess, right? Or
not that I'm aware of. But, and what's funny is she's not just a regular chicken. She's this fancy Polish buff lace chicken with the funny hairdo and stuff. It's like, where do you get chickens like that? You know, how does a chicken like that just
no idea where she came from?
I have no idea.
Free chicken.
Free chicken.
So let's talk a little about all the other things that you do along with, well, your studio we talked about. We talked about you performing as a solo artist because you're playing guitar on your own stuff.
Right.
You play bass with a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. You're also a live sound guy. You've been at RAM since its inception, right?
Since 2009.
Since it started. You're the sound guy. So if anybody says, oh, I used to do sound at RAM, they're lying because you're the guy.
Right, yeah. I've had 2 sick days and I think 2 or 3 vacation days. But other than that, I've been there every Saturday for 15 years.
That's amazing. And you enjoy the live sound part? Like, do you enjoy the mixing part as much as the
some days.
Creation? Yeah. I guess if it's something you don't care for. It's, you know, like polka festival or something.
Well, actually, at least the polka people are nice.
Right?
Sometimes.
So you've done that.
Yeah. We did, we had Oktoberfest at RAM a couple of years in a row, and it was polka bands.
Right.
They were nice, very easy to deal with. We do a lot of stuff. We do full jazz bands, like UNF Jazz Band comes out. It's a 20-piece band with horns. Right. You know, we do rock acts. We do folk acts, country. We do a lot of stuff that we do is like dance acts, school acts come out there. You know, the school will bring their chorus or their little school band. They'll do something.
Yeah.
So it's something different all the time. So I like that. I would not want to be doing sound in a club where it was rock bands every night. I would just get so tired of that and so jaded hearing that all the time. I like to hear some different stuff. And I always tell people the good thing about RAM is if you don't like what's going on the stage, wait an hour. The next act is going to be completely different.
That's a good thing to say, and I enjoy it. I played there. You actually got me hooked up playing there.
Yeah, you played there a couple times.
I was doing my Pop Over America tour, and you got me a gig there.
You showed up on the motorcycle.
I did, and it's such a neat thing. You're backed up to the river.
Yes.
And I guess it's a little difficult sound-wise. Do you have your an X32 there as well?
No, we're using actually... We just started a few years back using the X Air, the 16-channel that you mix with the tablet.
Is that a Mackie?
No, it's a Behringer.
It is a Behringer.
That's a
Behringer,
Behringer.
yeah.
That's a Behringer. Yeah. But for many years, we had a start out with a PV, but then we went to a Soundcraft, and we would set it up on the stage because they didn't want us to run a snake out with the audience. So we would set it up and run the sound from the stage. Mm-hmm. We did that for about the first 10 years. And we started out with an 8-channel board. Wow. Can you imagine trying to do
UNF jazz with an 8-channel board?
8-channel board, yeah. A lot of fun. We did a 10-piece Latin percussion group with the 8-channel board. Ugh. That was crazy. Mixing it from the stage, which was near impossible. So when we got the X Air, that was a lot nicer because I could actually go out in the audience and get a better sound, and we got more monitor choices. All that helps out. I do have a friend who's a sound guy who ran sound down there one time for some other event that they were doing like on a Sunday or something. He said, I'm not going back. That place is too much of a pain in the ass to run sound.
Yeah, no, it's so difficult because you've got weird hard surfaces, you got water, you got a big kind of amphitheater type thing.
It's got reverb for days.
Right.
Crazy amount of reverb. People are always telling me, can you turn the reverb down in the monitors? No, I cannot. There is no reverb in the monitors. This is just the space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of low-end buildup that gets crazy sometimes with kick drums and bass guitars and horns. Sometimes the horn reflections off the columns bounce back at you. And people tell me, can you turn down the horns? The mics are off.
Yeah.
That's just the horns.
Yeah, and they bleed into everything.
Yeah,
guess,
and
right?
some drummers
So
that
it's
come
tough.
down there, they're so loud that I just turn the mics off and you hear them plain as day.
But do you enjoy that gig? I mean,
I enjoy the gig. It's a lot of work. It's a very long day. Wears my ass out every Saturday.
and is that your only day gig, or do you do other things as well?
I have a home repair business on the side.
Really?
Yeah, that I do. That I'm kind of starting to slow down because I'm starting to do more studio stuff during the day. You used to
Okay.
be studio was just at night, and that's when a lot of people are available. But I've actually got more customers now that are asking me, "Hey, can I come over at 10 o'clock and do a session?" I'm like, "Sure."
Well, all of our friends are retired now, so we're all.
There's a lot of that.
I'm playing with Tommy and Scott on a show, and we practice in the day because
Yeah,
we're
there
all
you go.
retired. So you did the home repair while you were getting the studio going, and now
Yes,
it's going
yes.
to sort of take over for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. I've been like last 2 years. I've done more studio stuff than anything else
That's great.
that I've done.
That's great. Make your living doing what you love.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And what's in the future for you, Roy? What, are you working on? I'm sure you're working on another album because you're
Yes.
the most prolific guy I know, probably.
I'm working on another album. I started the other album, the new album, before this one was actually out the door.
Okay.
So I'm about 4 or 5 songs into it now.
That's awesome. And is it the same kind of feel with the
I'm
pedal
hoping
steel
it could-
and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have some steel on there, and I'm not sure what else. I've got to play with that, figure out what I want to do. Yeah.
Cool. And anybody else new coming into the studio?
Robert Lester Folsom's still doing something. Local guy Van Harden has just finished up an album that'll be coming out real soon. Lauren's working on another one. I've got there's a band called Old Dogs New Tricks. Most of the guys I think are in their 70s, and one of the guys is 80.
Wow.
And they're doing country rock, folk rock kind of stuff. And a lot of it is, I say country rock and folk rock, but some of it actually sounds a little Steely Dan-ish.
Okay.
You know, it's like Steely Dan and Willie Nelson. It's a strange combination, but he's got some really good songs. That's coming out. We're probably in December or January.
That sounds fun.
You know, and I've got, who else is working on an album here? Tamara Colonna is a local artist out at the beach who's done a couple albums, and she's got a new one coming out.
Cool. And one final thing, your Converse collection. Talk to about that. I've never seen you without Chuck Taylors on in my entire life, ever. So is that a lifestyle choice? Just kind of your
sorta.
thing? Like Roy's got the hat, Roy's got the Converse.
It's
you know?
like it's a branding thing. Yeah, you know, people.
I love it.
Yeah, I've got. I don't even know how many Converse. I tried to count them once, and I counted them, and Debbie was like, "Well, there's more in the closet." I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna count those.
Yeah, before your
and then we open up a drawer. There's more in there.
Yeah,
So,
it was
yeah.
funny. Before your gig, you had a picture of a whole collection of them, and you're like, "What should I wear to the gig?" And all your fans
Everyone
were
had a
picking
different
out
choice.
different sneakers and stuff like that. So, Roy, I want to thank you for coming in today. Anything
Thank
you
you,
want to
Joe.
add?
Oh gosh, thank you.
Oh,
for
website. Plug your website. RoyPeak.com.
RoyPeak.com.
Okay.
When it is up and working,
Okay, that's
which I need to update soon.
all right.
RoyPeak.com.
And where can we find your music? Spotify.
Spotify, Deezer, Amazon, Bandcamp. Anybody wants to buy it on Bandcamp? I always like that.
Please send money to Roy. Please send him money.
I need money. The chicken needs money.
chicken needs
Chicken needs
feed.
corn. Chicken needs corn.
Well,
Yes.
thanks so much for coming in, Roy.
Well,
and I
thank you,
appreciate
Joe.
you talking to us, and we'll see you real soon.
Bye, guys.
Popp Rock Shop. We make cool stuff.